Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to the assembled devotees. Yashamati from Chicago.
Hare Krishna, Yashamati Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharajas. Thank you for your association, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Is there anybody who would like to introduce?
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai, Preethi Vilasini from Charlotte. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharajas. Thank you so much for your association, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare Krishna, Anuradha Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. This is Preethi Devi Dasi from Texas. Nice to see you, Mataji. Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Hare Krishna Vinita Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharajas. Thank you for your wonderful association, Mataji. Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranams, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharajas. This is Preethi Vilasini Dasi. Sorry, my voice is not supporting me today.
Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Mataji, your voice is very, very low.
My Mataji?
No, Kirtida Mataji's voice.
I could not recognize Mataji. Let me do my formality then. Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharajas. Thank you so much for your association, and I'm so sorry to hear that voice. I could not even recognize it's you, Mataji. Please take care, and if there is anything we can help, please let us know, Mataji. Thank you, Dandavat Pranam, Mataji. Thank you for your association, even if you are not feeling well, Mataji. Very, very grateful. Thank you, Hare Krishna. Do we start, Mataji? It's almost time.
Just give me a minute.
Okay.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, welcome. I welcome you all to Bhakti Sangha Japa group, and today we are very, very fortunate to have with us Her Grace Preethi Vilasini Mataji to enlighten us on the beautiful literature called Chaitanya Bhagavat. Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharajas, and please take over the call. Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna everyone. Thank you all so much for joining, and today we'll be discussing Ramayana. Actually, that is the that's what we'll be doing for today. So before we get started,
I'm so used to saying Chaitanya Bhagavat now, so I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yes, Mataji, that's what we are used to at this time of the hour. So thank you all so much for joining us today. And before we get started, let me share my screen so that we know what you're doing. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Okay, thank you all for your wonderful association. And we are very, very fortunate to be celebrating the appearance of Lord Sri Ramachandra. And yesterday was the appearance of Lord Sri Ramachandra, but today we have the fortune to be discussing something from the Valmiki Ramayana. So thank you all so much. And just give me one more minute. Sorry, seems to be some issue with some technical issue from my side. So if you just give me a minute, I'll get restarted again. Sorry for that confusion. Let me switch off the video and I'll get back. I'm sorry. Okay, this is better. I hope you all can see my screen now. Can you
Yes,
confirm?
Yes, Mataji. We can.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'll switch on my video too. Thank you again for joining us. So yesterday we celebrated the auspicious appearance of Lord Sri Ramachandra. So today I thought it will be a good idea to discuss some key points from this very beautiful scripture, the Valmiki Ramayana. So today we are going to discuss Paratattva in the Valmiki Ramayana, Paratattva or Paramatma Tattva, that is repeatedly spoken about in the Srimad-Bhagavatam Ramayana. And this topic is based on the 18 Rahasyas of the Ramayana, which I will also list and explain. And then we'll delve into today's topic. Okay. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurum Deenatarinam Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitinamni Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschati Desatarini Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Kojantam Rama Rameti Maduram Maduraksharam Maruhya Kavita Shakam Vande Valmiki Kokilam Valmikir Munisimhasya Kavitavanacharinaha Shranvan Ramakatanatham Konayati Paramgatim Vedavedye Parepumse Jati Dasharatatmaje Veda Pracheta Sadasit Sakshat Ramayanatmana Anjananandanam Veeram Janaki Shokanashanam Kapisham Akshahantaram Vande Lanka Bhayankaram Manojavam Marudhatulya Vegam Jitendriyam Buddhimatam Varishtam Vatatmajam Manarayudamukyam Sri Ramadutam Shirasa Namami Anjaneya Madhipatanalanam Kanchanadri Kamaniya Vigraham Parijata Tarumula Vasinam Bhavayami Pavamananantanam Yatra Yatra Raghunatha Kirtanam Tatra Tatra Kritamastakанчалим Bhashpavari Paripurna Lochanam Marutim Namata Rakshasantakam Shri Raghavam Dasharatatmajam Apraviyam Sita Patim Raghukularmaya Ratnadeva Majanubahum Aravinda Talaya Daksham Ramam Nishachara Vinashanam Namami. Okay, so this is Paratattva in the Valmiki Ramayana, a very beautiful picture of Lord Sri Ramachandra, Sita Devi, Lakshman, Shatrugna, Bharata, Hanuman, Jambavan and others after the victory of Lord Sri Ram. Okay, so first, this Valmiki Ramayana, we all know, is a part of Itihasas. So the Vedic literature, you all know already this concept that it is divided into the 4 Vedas, about 108 Upanishads, of which 10 are very, very important. And it also has the Itihasas and the Puranas. Among the Puranas is the Amala Purana, Srimad-Bhagavatam, that is the most celebrated. Vishnu Purana is also celebrated. Besides the Puranas, the 2 Itihasas form a very, very important part of the Vedic literature. And one of the Itihasa is the Mahabharata, which has beautiful stories of different personalities that existed in the age of Dwapara. And we have the Sri Valmiki Ramayana, the story of Lord Ramachandra, who appeared in the Treta Yuga. So if you make a comparison between the 2 Itihasas that we have, Ramayana is celebrated as Itihasa Shrestha, meaning it is somewhat superior. The reason is because from the beginning to the end, it is all about the Supreme Lord. Of course, the Mahabharata also has very important portions, like the entire Bhagavad Gita is actually embedded in the Mahabharata. But however, the overall mood of the Mahabharata is very different. And the audience for Mahabharata is also very different. So that's why Srimad Valmiki Ramayana is actually celebrated a little more than actually the Mahabharata itself. So The Valmiki Ramayana is just not a story. Of course, you all know that. You've been hearing lessons after lessons in so many classes from the Ramayana, from the different stories of the Ramayana, the different characters of the Ramayana. And yeah, there is so much to learn. But it is not just about life lessons. There is much more to the Ramayana. So these are called as the 18 cardinal teachings of the Ramayana, or they are also called as the 18 rahasyas, the secrets that are embedded in the verses of the Ramayana. So as we discussed in our previous session a week ago, these 18 cardinal teachings were taught by Sri Shaila Purna, who's also called as Tirumalai Nambi, to Sripad Ramanujacharya, about 1,000 years ago, and it was handed down in Sampradaya, and the commentators today are using these 18 rahasyas or cardinal teachings to understand the message of the Ramayana. And in ISKCON, we have a book published now with word-to-word meanings of the Ramayana, the purports, and these commentaries. So we'll be directly using that book, and I'll show you a picture of the book if you have not purchased it yet. And if you wish to purchase, I can guide you towards how you can purchase it in the US. So the Ramayana, the structured study of the Ramayana is out in our society. And it's very, very interesting the way the commentaries are dealt with. So let's get into the subject matter, 18 rahasyas or the cardinal teachings of the Valmiki Ramayana. The very first rahasya is what we are going to discuss today, which is Ramayana elucidates the Veda and the Vedanta. So because it gives knowledge about the Veda and the Vedanta, the ultimate purpose of the Vedanta, it is also called as Vidya. Okay, and actual translation for this particular rahasya is called as Paramatma Tattva Vichara or Paratattva. So that's why the topic for today is Paratattva in the Sri Ramayana. The second rahasya that is discussed is the means to attain the Supreme Lord. So first we see who the Supreme Lord is. There is a Vichara on the Paratattva, and what is the means to attain him? That is also there within the Ramayana. The third is surrender. The means is actually surrender. That is the answer. Surrender must be for what? For attaining devotional service. So this is discussed as the third rahasya. The fourth is that when one is performing devotional service, one must request for the Lord's mercy to continuously perform devotional service and forgiveness for one's sins. Okay, that should be the mood of the meditator. The fifth is that a qualified person must have the mood of servitude and dependence. Servitude especially is seen in the life of Lakshmana. By the example of Lakshmana, one can understand what service one must do, how one must serve. The other thing is dependence on the mercy of the Lord, and this dependency is shown through the activities of Bharata. Then not only should one show dependency and servitude to the Supreme Lord, but one should also serve the Vaishnavas. So that is exemplified by Shatrughna. And then Ramayana discusses Artha Panchaka, okay? The 5 arthas, Artha Panchaka, which is the Supreme Lord, the Jiva, the means to attain him, the result of attaining him, obstructions in the path of attaining him. So this is called as Artha Panchaka, just like how Bhagavad Gita also, it discusses about Jiva, Ishvara, like that. Similar concept. 9, surrender, right? We saw that is the means. Surrender must be helplessly done and exclusively done only to the Supreme Lord. So this is something that we actually saw last year, or maybe 2 years before, about the science of surrender as explained in the Valmiki Ramayana, and how some surrenders were not successful. And we also discussed why they were not successful. Because they were not done to the Supreme Lord in the right mode. So surrender must be done exclusively only to the Supreme Lord. The 10th rahasya is we need the help of a bona fide acharya to perform surrender. One must engage in devotional service in full surrender every single day till his last life. So it's not that I see today I surrendered. Krishna says Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. So I accept, oh Krishna, I surrender today and I'm done. No, you'll have to perform this devotional service in the mood of surrender till the last day of one's life. As long as one is alive, one must carry out his duties following in the footsteps of Lord Sri Ramachandra. This is the other thing in the Ramayana, that you cannot stop your duties. You have to continue to perform duties. Then 13, one must live in a place where the Lord is present, like his deity form. This is also one of the 5 important principles as discussed by Srila Rupa Goswami. One must live in a devotional place like Vrajadham, or at least where a temple is present or where the deity is present. One must pass his time studying the Ramayana. Of course, since this is the Ramayana, it's going to say Ramayana. In the Srimad-Bhagavatam, we will say Srimad-Bhagavatam. The Ramayana, which has the meaning of the Gayatri in it, must be recited regularly. So it is explained that the Ramayana has 24,000 verses, and it is divided into sets of 24,000s. Okay, so the first set of 1,000 begins with the, then sa, vi, tur, va, re, nyam. Like that, if you divide the Ramayana, the 24,000 verses, into 1,000 sections, you will see that the Gayatri is present in these 24,000 verses. The 24-syllable Gayatri is present in the 24,000 verses. The other principle that is expounded in the Ramayana is that one should never touch or study any deviant philosophies. This is seen in the pastime of Jabali and Sri Ram. It's a very big argument between Jabali and Sri Ram when Ramachandra is in the forest. So that pastime shows us that it is unnecessary, or it's a waste of time to study deviant philosophies. 17, even great souls encounter calamities, like Ram encountered calamities, Sita encountered calamities. Everybody in the Ramayana, if you see, encountered some calamity or the other. Even Hanuman, you see in the Sundarakand, when Hanuman was jumping across the ocean, he faced so many calamities. So by reading this again and again, one must develop a desire to get out of material existence. This is also one of the important lessons from the 9th canto of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, where the Ramayana is discussed in the Bhagavatam. So Shukadev Goswami says that one should, understand that, this life is full of misery, seeing the life of Sri Ram and desire to get out of this material existence. So that is also said in the Srimad-Bhagavatam. And finally, the 18th Rahasya is that all the 64 arts are also discussed in the Ramayana. So Ramayana, as we started off, we said, it is just not a story. It has a lot of philosophical understanding about the supreme absolute truth. But does it only deal with that? No, the 64 arts, the Upangas of the Vedas are also present in the Sri Valmiki Ramayana. So what is not present in the Ramayana? Everything is present in the Sri Ramayana. So that's how the commentators talk about the 18 Rahasyas. Okay, so we are going to go for the first one. It's only 15 minutes. Hope to keep up time. Vidya or Paratattva. Okay, Paramatma Tattva. So what is that? The Ramayana elucidates the essence of the Veda and the Vedanta. So now what is the rule that one has to follow to understand how the Ramayana is actually talking about the Paratattva? For that, there is a verse. This is a principle. Okay, this verse is also being used by before we get into the rule, we'll just see a few other things. I want to talk about how the Itihasas and the Puranas are very special as compared to the Vedas, the 4 Vedas. So this is also elaborated by Jiva Goswami in the Tattva Sandarbha. He talks about the glory of Srimad-Bhagavatam. He also talks about the same point. So let's see what the Shastras say. Prayena purva bhagartho dharma shastrena katyate itihasa puranabhyam veda tartha prakashyate. The teachings of Sri Jaimani's Purva Mimamsa are mainly stated in the Dharma Shastras, and the teachings of Sri Vyasa's Vedanta Sutras are revealed in the Itihasas and Puranas. So without the support of the Itihasas and Puranas, one can never understand what Vedavyasa has written in the Vedanta. This is also being heavily commented by Srila Jiva Goswami in the Sandarbhas. So, to really understand what is Vedanta, one must take the support of Itihasas and Puranas. And our topic is Vidya. So, when we say Vidya, means it is derived from the root word known as Vit. Vit is to know. Even the Vedanta Sutras, they begin with this very first aphorism, which is Atato Brahma Jijnasa. So you must, what is real Vidya? You must try to inquire unto the Supreme. That is actually real Vidya. That is the import of the Vedas. Now you are all experts in Bhagavad Gita. So you all know how Krishna reveals the secret in the Bhagavad Gita itself. What is the import of the Vedas? What does the Vedas want to tell us? Would anyone like to tell which verse it is from the Bhagavad Gita where the secret of the Vedas is revealed? What is the ultimate purpose of the Vedas? Anyone would like to try?
15:15. Aham Veda.
Sir, yes, you're right, Mataji. Thank you. Sarvasya chaham hridhi sannivishto mata smriti jnanam apohanam cha vedaischa sarvair ahameva vedyah Vedanta krit veda videva chaham. So Krishna is telling, I am the writer of the Vedas, I am the compiler of the Vedas. From the Vedas, I am to be known. That's what Krishna is telling, right? So from the Vedas, the Supreme Lord is to be known. That is the purpose of the Vedas. So what is the purpose of all knowledge? The purpose of all knowledge is to understand who is Paramatma, who is Paratattva. That is the purpose of all the knowledge. Now, the Puranas and the Itihasas, they are very much concerned only about that. Okay, Jaimini's Purva Mimamsa, which is the 4 Vedas, it's all a manual of different rituals. That is not so much worried about it. But the real import of the Vedanta is actually seen in the Puranas and Itihasas. And if you read the Tattva Sandarbha, you will understand how Srimad-Bhagavatam is all about it. But here we are going to see how Srimad-Ramayana is also all about it. So Bhagavad Gita has revealed the secret and Ramayana also elucidates on the same point. Paratattva, Vidya, that is the first secret. Now, how do you identify the Paratattva within the Ramayana? So there is the principle of the common rule. This principle is used by every Acharya when he analyzes a text. As I mentioned, again, Jiva Goswami, he uses this even in the Sarva Samvadini commentary of the Sandarbhas. For example, Paramatma Sandarbha, he directly quotes this verse. And he says, I'm using this verse as a thumb rule to find out what is the common underlying theme of the book. Okay, so that's how he presents it. So similarly, following in his footsteps, we will recite the verse and we'll see what the verse says. Upakramo pasama harva abhyaso purvata palam arthavado upapatti cha lingam tatparya nirnaye. The signs used to determine the overall meaning are, you have to analyze a text beginning, conclusion, you have to check for repetition, you have to check for novelty, the result, praise, and logical reason. So basically, the method of analysis by checking for these 6 signs will now be applied to ascertain the identity of the Supreme Brahman in the Ramayana. So what is this verse telling? It's telling that if you want to understand, okay, the central theme of a book, you have to open the book, you have to look at the beginning, see if there are any important verses in the beginning of the text. You'll have to see the end. Okay, you have to see the end. You have to check for repetitions. Is this sign repeated through the entire book? And you will have to check for result. You will have to check for novelty. And you will also be checking for logic and praise. So these are the different elements that decide the central theme of a book. Okay, so we will apply this verse and we will analyze the Ramayana, the entire Ramayana, and we'll understand that the central theme of the Ramayana is to show that Vishnu descended as Lord Sri Ramachandra and he is the Supreme Lord. So that is what we are going to do in this entire class. So what are we going to do? First, we're going to check the beginning. Then we'll check the end. Then we'll check for repetition. And then we'll see the other aspects. So first is the beginning. So you all know that the Ramayana is divided into different khandas or different cantos. The very first khanda, the very beginning of the Valmiki Ramayana, is called as the Balakanda. So in the Balakanda, the very first chapter, you have this verse, very famous verse, Konasmin sampratam loke gunavan kascha viryavan dharmaknyascha kritaknyascha satyavakyo dridavratah. So, this is the very second verse. The very first verse is a description of Valmiki, that he is Muni Sreshta, he is Muni Pungavaha, Tapasvadhyaya Nirataram, Tapasvim Vakvidamvaram. That is the very first verse. And this is the second verse of the Valmiki Ramayana. So this great Valmiki, who is very, very great in his austerities, Tapasvadhyaya, who has got a lot of Swadhyaya, who studied very greatly, he's great. He's Muni Pungavaha, such a great personality, had one question. That is how the Valmiki Ramayana begins. What is the question? That is the second verse. Konasmin sampratam loke gunavan kascha viryavan. Who in this world at present, who is existing now, is the great person with high attributes, who's valiant, virtuous, thankful, and who's also true to his word and determined in his deed. So he lists 6 qualities in the second verse of the Valmiki Ramayana, and he asks, who's this person who has these qualities? And he doesn't stop there. He lists further 16 qualities. So he lists a total of 16 qualities, and he has this question, is there someone who has all these 16 Kalyana Gunas of the Supreme Lord who's present now on this earth? So that was the question he had, and he asked this question to none other than Narada Muni. So Narada Muni appears there, and Valmiki, he lists 16 different qualities which is present in the Supreme, and he asks Narada Muni, is that person present now? Why is he asking that question? He already has an idea, actually, that Lord Sri Ram was present at that time and he was performing pastimes. Actually, the commentators tell us that Valmiki already knew, but he wanted a reconfirmation. Is this the supreme truth? I want to know. So at that time, Narada Muni, he hears all these 16 qualities and he gives a broad smile and he gives this answer. Ikshvaku Vamsha Prabhavo Ramo Nama Janaishrutaha Nityatma Mahaviryo Dyutiman Dhritiman Vashihi. So in this one line, he actually reveals that this is indeed the supreme absolute truth. Okay, what is the translation? He says, he descended in the Ikshvaku dynasty. Who descended? The supreme truth. He is known to his subjects by the name Rama. He is untransformed. What is he? He's Nitya Atma. He's untransformed. He's changeless. Nitya Atma. So the Upanishads, they describe the Supreme Lord to be Nitya Atma. He's Mahaviryo. He's Dyutiman, Dhritiman, and Vashihi. Now, Vashihi means one who's the controller of everyone. Such a person is called as a Vashihi, Dhritiman Vashihi. Each of these qualities that is mentioned here, Nityatma, Mahaviryo, Dyutiman, Dhritiman, Vashihi, each of these are actually commented in different Upanishads belonging to the Supreme Lord. So there is a big commentary to this one verse of the Ramayana. So we'll not get into the commentary, but if you just remember these 2 words, one is he is untransformed. Obviously, it is only the Supreme Lord. And second, he is the controller of all. So who is that? That is Sri Ram, born in the Ikshvaku dynasty. So after a smile, Narada Muni, he reveals the answer, that it is indeed Lord Ramachandra, and Lord Ramachandra is performing pastimes now, because Valmiki Ramayana was written at the time of Sri Rama. So itihasas generally are recorded when the events are happening, whereas Puranas are recorded after the events have happened. Okay, so that is one difference between itihasas and Puranas. So now Narada Muni tells, this is Ramachandra and he's appeared here and he's the supreme absolute truth. And he doesn't stop there. He talks the Sankshepta Ramayana, which is nothing but the essence of the 24,000 verses presented in 100 verses. So he gives you a summary of the entire Ramayana. He gives whom? He gives Valmiki, and he sows the seed of the Valmiki Ramayana in the heart of Valmiki so that Valmiki can write the Ramayana. So before writing the Ramayana, he receives initiation from Narada Muni. Okay, so he gets the seed of a few verses of the Ramayana and he builds on it. Just like Srimad-Bhagavatam, Vyasadeva, he receives the seed, right? He receives the he receives the seed from Narada Muni, and then he begins to write the glories of the entire Srimad-Bhagavatam. So like that, this is what happens in the beginning. In the beginning itself, it is revealed. Now, the conclusion part. The conclusion is the Uttarakanda. So Ramayana has, as you know, Balakanda, and then Ayodhya, then Aranya, then Sundarakanda, Yuddhakanda, and finally, Kishkindakanda, Sundarakanda, Yuddhakanda, and finally there is the Uttarakanda. Now in the Uttarakanda Ramayana, that is when Lord Ramachandra actually departs to his abode, winding up his pastimes. So at that time, when he's departing to his world after winding up his pastimes, there is one personality who appears in front of Lord Ramachandra requesting Lord Rama's audience. And that was Kala personified. Kala personified comes and reminds Lord Ram that it is time for his departure. To remind Lord Ram, he actually brings the message of Lord Brahma. So what does the message of Lord Brahma read? That is this verse. So it says, Sankshipya cha pura lokan mayaya swayamevahi maharnaveshayano apsu mam tvam purvam ajijinaha padme divye akras sankarshe nabhyam Patyamamapi prajapatyam tvaya karma mayi sarvam niveshitam. The powerful grandfather, Lord and Master of the worlds, Brahma, has stated as follows in a message to be conveyed to you. In the past, you yourself wound up the worlds of the animate and inanimate through your varied potency Maya. While lying on the Garbhodak ocean, you gave birth to me from your divine lotus navel that was as brilliant as the sun and gave me the entire responsibility of the creation of all creatures. This is Uttarakanda chapter 10, verses 4, 2, 3, 4, and 7. So this is the common theme in those verses. So through such statements, both in the beginning and in the conclusion, it is directly admitted that Lord Vishnu alone is the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Brahman, and he is the cause of all the universes. He's mentioned as the cause, the generator and creator of all creatures. So this is a central theme. We have seen the beginning and the conclusion. Next, we should check for repetition. So what do all the kandas say? Do all these cantos consistently talk that Vishnu is the Supreme and he has descended as Lord Sri Ram? That is being checked next, repetition. So we see again in the Balakanda that Valmiki, he started writing the Ramayana. Okay, so he gets the seed from Narad Muni and he begins writing the Ramayana. And he says that actually Dasharatha Maharaj, he desired to perform a great sacrifice known as the Putra Kameshti Yajna because he did not have sons. Okay, so while he was performing this great yajna in grand scale, at that time, all the demigods, they all appeared in the sky to come and accept the offerings of the yajna. So all the demigods were present, headed by Brahma. Now, when all the demigods came down to accept their offerings, their respective offerings, at that time, these different demigods, they actually saw Brahma, who's their leader, and they began talking to Brahma. What did they tell Brahma? They told Brahma, oh dear Lord, you have given so many boons to Ravana. You know, Ravana has asked you for several boons and you have made him almost unconquerable. He has become so great that he is threatening all the universes. So we need to find a solution for this. Okay. So while they were discussing like that, suddenly in the sky who appeared? Vishnu appeared on his Garuda. How did he appear? That is the verse here. Etasminantare Vishnur upayato mahadyutihi shankachakra gadapanihi pitavasa jagatpatihi. At this time, the greatly effulgent Lord of the universe, right? He is Jagatpati, Lord Vishnu, bearing his in his hands a conch, discus, and mace, dressed in yellow cloth, appeared in the sky. Okay, so he gives his audience. Who gives? The Supreme Lord himself. He is giving his audience. And when he gave his audience, everyone looked up at him, and all the demigods immediately, they begin singing his praise and they surrender unto him. So they say, Tvam gatihi parama deva sarve samna parantapaha. The demigods, they praise him as the supreme being and the object of surrender for everyone. So singing his praises, they all surrender to him. And then Brahma, who's the leader of the demigods, makes a request to Vishnu, asking him to descend. So that is when he hears the cries of the demigods and the complaint of the demigods that Ravana is now tormenting all the different worlds. That is when Vishnu, he makes this claim. Bhayam tyajata bhadram vo hitartam yudhiravanam. Don't worry. Bhayam tyajata. Give up all fear. I will descend and I will get rid of Ravana. Dashavarsha sahasrani, dashavarsha shatani cha, vatsyami manushe loke palayan prithivimimam. Get rid of all fear, let all safety be upon you. Bhadramte, very similar to Bhagavatam, right? So when the Supreme Lord gives vision to Brahma in the Bhagavatam, he says Bhadramte and he gives a shake hand to Brahma. So like that, here Vishnu, we see, he says, get rid of all fear, let all safety be upon you. I will eliminate that evil-minded Ravana. I will reside in this human world, ruling this earth for 11,000 years. Dashavarsha sahasrani, dashavarsha shatani cha. Thus, Vishnu assured the demigods that he would descend. At that time, Vishnu, he looks down at Dasharath and he feels very inclined towards Dasharath and he wants to become Dasharatha's son. So that is when the four of them, okay, Rama, Lakshmana, Bharata, Shatrughna, they descend as Dasharath's son after the payasam, that is the kheer or the offering from the fire emanates, and then all the wives of Dasharath, they consume this and eventually they become pregnant and all the four of them appear. Okay, so once all the four of them appear, they grow really fast. Now it's interesting that when the Shukadeva Goswami describes in the Srimad-Bhagavatam about Krishna in the 10th canto, Bhali Leela of Krishna goes on for several chapters because there's just so much to speak about Krishna. Because Krishna did this, he did that, he went on killing demons and he was very mischievous. He did all sorts of things. But Lord Ramachandra, his Bali Leela is very, very simple. He was a very disciplined child, no much Leela. So Valmiki, he rushes through a few verses and he finishes the Bali Leela of Ramachandra and he suddenly tells that Rama now became 12 years old. So within a few verses, Rama becomes 12 years old in the Ramayana. So after he becomes 12 years old, now there is a twist in the Ramayana. There is an important situation that happens. So Lord Ramachandra, he was sitting with his father Dasharath and Lakshman. There's a beautiful picture. And there is a great sage who enters. Okay. Actually, technically, according to the Ramayana, at this point when Vishwamitra enters, Rama Lakshmana are not present. Rama comes later. But still, it's a beautiful painting. Okay, so here you have the king, and here you have a great sage who's Vishwamitra. So Vishwamitra, he enters the assembly, and he makes a request. And he asks Dasharath if his son Ramachandra can be sent with Vishwamitra for guarding his different sacrifices that he's performing in the forest. At that time, he's really shocked. The father is really shocked. And he says, I cannot send my son. My son is not even 16 years old. Because at this time, Lord Ramachandra was 12 years old. So he says, Ramam Dasharatha. He says, Rama, my dear Rama is not even 16 years old. And he's not ready to send. At that time, Vishwamitra gets very angry. And then he makes the statement. What is the statement? He says, Aham vedmi mahatmanam ramam satya parakramam vasishtopi mahateja yeche me tapasi stitaha. I am aware, he says, I am aware that Rama is the supreme soul. Aham vedmi mahatmanam ramam satya parakramam. And his prowess is real and true. Even Vasishta of great prowess and all those here situated in austerities know this. So it's very rare that Vasishtha and Vishwamitra, they concur on the same thing. They always have difference of opinion. But for once, it is mentioned by the commentators that Vishwamitra and Vasishtha concurred on the same thing. They agreed on the same thing. What is that they were agreeing? That this Rama is the Supreme Lord and he's capable of anything. And why? How do these people know? They say, because both Vishwamitra and Vasishtha are situated in austerities. Tapa. So he says, Ye chemi tapasi stitaha. I am situated in austerities. I can identify the supreme truth. So I am able to identify that this boy is capable of everything. So again, there is a repetition in the Balakanda itself that here is the supreme absolute truth. Again and again, the supremacy of Vishnu over the other devatas is also established in chapters 70 and 75 by Vasishtha. How when Vasishtha was describing the great Ikshvaku lineage during the marriage of Sita and Ram, further, towards the end of the Balakanda, describes the marriage between Lord Rama and Sita. So at that time, Vasishtha, he introduces the dynasty of the Ikshvaku. So at that time, he says that Brahma was born from the Supreme Lord's navel. Okay, that's how he describes the supremacy of Vishnu. At this point, he doesn't tell that Vishnu is the Rama. He doesn't talk about it, but still he establishes the supremacy of Vishnu over other devatas. So that is the point that the acharyas bring about. So they say in chapters 70 and 75, again, the supremacy of the Lord is described when Vasishtha was describing the dynasty of the Ikshvaku, and when it is also again reinstated by Parashuram, who comes after the marriage. Okay, so Parashuram comes and he throws a challenge to Lord Ram to actually lift the Vishnu Dhanush as well. After Ram breaks the Shiva Dhanush, or rather, strings the Shiva Dhanush, Parashurama, he enters and he challenges Lord Ramachandra. At that time, Parashuram, in his own mouth, he actually establishes the supremacy of the Supreme Lord Vishnu by stating the story. That story we will see again as we progress in this chapter. The next section is Ayodhya Kanda. So we saw in the Balakanda again and again, Vishnu is established as the Supreme, and that Supreme Lord is descended as Rama, and Rama is non-different from Vishnu. Balakanda, we saw enough. Now the next part is Ayodhya Kanda. So now time moved on, okay? We saw that Sita and Ram were married, and then Parashuram came, and then he made a challenge, and Parashuram's pride was conquered by Lord Ramachandra. Then Sita, Ram, and Lakshmana, his wife, and Shatrughna and his wife, Bharata and his wife, all of them, they go to Ayodhya, and they live in Ayodhya very, very happily. And time passes by, okay? So now Ayodhya Kand opens. Now when Ayodhya Kand opens, the very first verse is a glorification of Shatrughna. Why so? Because Shatrughna is celebrated as the greatest of the devotees because he took the service of serving the devotees of the devotees. So that's why he's celebrated as great. Now, after describing Shatrughna, Valmiki, he tells that both Shatrughna and Bharata, both of them, they went to their mama's house. Okay, that is Kaikeyi's brother's house, meaning they went to Kekedesh. They went for a holiday. And after talking about them, now he focuses on the glories of Ramachandra. So now he tells that Rama was continuing to stay in Ayodhya. And how was he staying in Ayodhya? He had developed wonderful qualities. He had developed the great qualities of a king. He had fine speech. He had fine character. He behaved very well. So he goes on describing the greatness of Lord Ram. But at one point he stops. And then he identifies this Ram as the Supreme Lord Vishnu. So he says, indeed, that eternal Lord Vishnu, upon being besieged by the Devas who wanted the vehement Ravana killed, took birth in the world of the humans. So at one point, Valmiki again assures us, okay, this wonderful personality is none other than that Supreme Lord who made a promise that he will descend. Later, as the Ayodhya Kand progresses, the story progresses, Kaikeyi, she banishes Ram to the forest, and then Ram, Lakshman, Sita, they actually go to the forest, and this goes on. As they enter the forest, Bharata is feeling very bad. He gets to know about the fact that his brother is being sent. He scolds his mother Kaikeyi, and then Bharata, along with the entire entourage of Valmiki, Vasishta and others, they all go to the forest to bring back Lord Ramachandra. So that is when, the very beautiful story of Bharata accepting the sandals of Ram is discussed. So before Bharata accepts the sandals and he goes back to the kingdom, Bharata, Vasishta, and all the others there, they try to convince Lord Ram to actually return to the kingdom and take up the kingdom. So when they are trying to convince, Lord Ramachandra, now Vasishta, who is the Kula Guru of the Ikshvakus, he stops and he explains to Ram, he beseeches Ram actually. He beseeches Ram and he says, my dear Ram, you have to come back to the kingdom because it is the tradition that the eldest son in the family actually takes the throne in the dynasty of the Ikshvakus. Okay, so when he describes that, at this point, not only did Vasishta describe the dynasty of the Ikshvaku during the marriage of Ram, again he describes the entire dynasty to Ramachandra himself, reminding him that this is how your dynasty is and this is the practice of your dynasty, that only the eldest son should take the throne. So that time he tells, from the all-pervading self-effulgent Lord was born Brahma, who is everlasting, eternal, and inexhaustible. So again, he identifies that it was only Vishnu who gave birth to this Brahma, and from Brahma, you have this entire dynasty of Manu and all of them. And he says that Vishnu is the only one who's self-effulgent, who's self-born, who's eternal, and who's inexhaustible. It is no one else but Vishnu who can be considered as the Supreme Lord. Again, here he doesn't say that you are that Supreme Lord, but he establishes the supremacy of Vishnu. So you would see this pattern through the Ramayana. Sometimes it is established that this Rama is non-different from Vishnu. Sometimes it is established that Vishnu is the absolute truth as compared to all the other demigods. So this theme is repetitive throughout the Ramayana. And it intermingles, from time to time. The next one is the Aranyakand. Okay, time passes. Of course, Lord Ramachandra, he sends back Bharata. Bharata takes the sandals and he goes and he keeps the sandals on the throne and he stays back, outside in the outskirts and he's performing austerities. Lord Ramachandra, Sita, they are in the forest. And of course, Shurpanaka appears, Nasik Panchavati pastimes. Shurpanaka appears, so Shurpanaka's nose and ears are cut off by Lakshman, and she's sent away. She goes and she complains to her brother Karadoshan, and then they come and 14,000 demons, Rakshasas, are actually attacked by Ekarama, just one Ram. He fights with 14,000 demons or Rakshasas, headed by Karadoshan and Trishiras. And then after all this is done, Shurpanaka complains to Ravana. After she sees that all of them are defeated, she takes the message to Ravana. And Ravana, he hears about the beauty of Sita and he desires to send Maricha. Maricha is his uncle. Okay, so Ravana sends Maricha to the forest so that Sita can get allured by the golden deer. So this is the pastime of the golden deer. Now let's see what Maricha had to say. So when Maricha was summoned by Ravana to actually go in the form of a golden deer, Maricha says, I will not go. Okay, he says that earlier I've already seen this boy, Ram. Now he's much older. When he was 12 years old, I had an encounter with him. At that time itself, I could understand that he's no ordinary person. He is actually the Supreme Lord. Okay, now these are the revelations done by Maricha. So when Tataka, Subhahu, and Maricha appeared to spoil the sacrifice of Vishwamitra, when Rama and Lakshman had accompanied him, at that time, Subhahu was killed, Tataka was killed, but Maricha managed to escape. Okay, why did he manage to escape? So that the Ramayana can continue and he can tell his realizations, so that we have something to read. Maricha escapes. Okay, and Maricha, he tells Ravana that, when he was 12 years old, when Rama was 12 years old itself, I couldn't tolerate his arrows. I couldn't stand in front of him. Now, he's even stronger. Why? He mentions this verse. Apremeyam hi tat tejo yasya sadhanak janakatmaja. He says he's now with Janakatmaja. The Shaktiman is with his Shakti. So when Shaktiman is with Shakti, when they are together, he's double powerful. So I cannot even stand in front of him. And he calls Ramachandra as Aprameyam. Aprameyam means immeasurable. You cannot understand. You can understand. He's unbounded. He's immeasurable. No one can understand the supreme truth. The Upanishads describe the Supreme Lord as Aprameya. That is also one of the names in the Vishnu Sahasranam. So no one can understand the supreme truth. So directly Maricha is revealing to Ravana that he's Aprameya. He's not an ordinary person. Don't try to measure him. He's immeasurable. And now he's going to be double, triple, 10 times stronger because he's with Shri. He's with Janakatmaja. Now, when he says Janakatmaja, he also means another thing. Not only is he with his consort and he's double powerful, he's also with his devotee, indirectly, because Sita is the daughter of Janaka, who's a great devotee. He's celebrated as Rajarishi. He's the only one who's also described in the Bhagavad Gita by Krishna. So he's a great exemplary devotee. So now Maricha is identifying this Rama. He's so powerful. He has connection with Janaka. He has connection with Janakatmaja. Now he's become even more powerful. Some years back, I saw him as a brahmachari. I saw him alone, but now I cannot even stand in front of him. That's how Maricha says. And then Maricha, in the same conversation, he tells very explicitly that Sri Ram is the Lord of everyone. He says, Raja Sarvasya Lokasya. He is the Lord of all the worlds. Just like how among the Devas, Indra is the Lord. Okay, Indra, he's the Lord of the Devas, but this person who is here, he's Sarvasya Lokaraja. He rules the entire, all the three worlds. Who is the only one who's the controller of all the three worlds? It is the Supreme Lord. So like this, from Maricha's realizations also, in the Aranyakanda, Ramachandra is established as the supreme truth and Vishnu is established as the supreme among all the Devatas. Okay, time flows. And then what happens after this episode of Maricha? Sita is kidnapped, right? Ravana comes in the guise of a fake sannyasi and he takes away Sita. Lakshmana and Ramachandra, they are searching for Sita everywhere. They are not able to find him. And while they are going in search, they are guided towards Kishkinda. So they come to Kishkinda, they meet Shabari, the Shabari pastime goes on. And then finally, they make their way to the Rishyamukha Parvat. That is where Hanuman and Sugriva are. Hanuman and Sugriva, they meet with Lord Ramachandra. Sugriva and Lord Ramachandra, they make a pact of friendship. They go around fire. They exchange their vows of friendship. And now Sugriva tells us problem. He tells us problem about his brother Vali. That Vali is actually taking control of things. And he feels that actually Vali has to be eliminated before he can make any progress. So now Lord Ramachandra was very determined to help Sugriva eliminate Vali. So that's the fight here, Sugriva and Vali. I think you also had a class today in the morning about this. So after the fight was over, okay, there is one personality who comes and who establishes the supremacy of Lord Ramachandra, and that is the very great Tara. Tara was the wife of Vali. Okay, actually, before Vali headed out to fight with Sugriva, at that time itself, Tara had a suspicion. Tara had heard from Angada's spies that this person who's making friendship with Sugriva is non-different from the Supreme Lord, and he has come all the way from Ayodhya. So, like Kshatriya kings, and even in those days, even these Vanaras, everyone, they all had spies. So these spies would go and they would collect information. Now, Angada's spies, they had already found out this matter, that Sugriva is making pact with a resplendent personality. And there are rumors that this personality, not even rumors, it is a fact, but people are talking that this personality is non-different from the Supreme Lord, and he has descended in the Ikshvaku dynasty. So all this information was gathered by Tara. Now, Tara, before Vali headed out itself, she gives him a warning. She tells him not to go. Okay, she tells him, he is the sheltering tree of all the sadhus. Nivasa vriksha sadhunam apannanam paragatihi. He is the ultimate sanctuary for those who approach him for shelter. So he's paragati, meaning anyone who wants shelter, they actually go to this person. And he's the sole repository of fame. Endowed with knowledge and realization, he's absorbed in carrying out the instructions of his father. That is the reason he's in the forest. Like the Himalayas for valuable minerals, he is a great reservoir of all auspicious qualities. So she describes the glories of Lord Ramachandra, tells him he is the shelter of the entire universe. He's the shelter not only for the sadhus, but he's the shelter for anyone who approaches him for shelter. Sugriva has approached him for shelter. He's none other than the Supreme Lord. So please don't go, you're going to lose. So this is something that Tara warns Vali, but Vali goes. And there is a fight, and Vali is conquered. At that time, now imagine, here is a lady whose husband is dead by Lord Ramachandra, and Ramachandra comes and stands in front of him, and Tara, she's glorifying Ramachandra. She is not scolding Ramachandra, rather she is glorifying Ramachandra. So Tara tells to Lord Ram, she tells, Tvam aprameyascha, you are aprameya, you are immeasurable, you are unfathomable. And then she says, you are durasadascha, you are unassassinable. Meaning only the Supreme Lord is immeasurable. He is aprameya, cannot be assassinated. Can the Supreme Lord be killed? No, he's unassassinable, assassiable. He's self-controlled. The Supreme Lord is self-controlled, because even when he was helping Sugriva, he was helping Sugriva not so that he could acquire the kingdom of Kishkinda. He was helping Sugriva so that Sugriva could actually get the kingdom of Kishkinda. So, and he didn't have any loose senses, when he saw other people. So Lord Ramachandra was completely self-controlled. He's supremely dharmika. So the commentators, they describe so much about this one verse that was spoken by Tara, that this verse can be applied only to the Supreme Lord. Because at this point in time, Lord Ramachandra was not ordinary dharmika. He was not doing some ordinary dharmika activity like trying to help a friend. No. He helped Sugriva without any benefit for himself. And not only that, he actually was the cause for the liberation of Vali. So that is the reason Tara is calling him supremely dharmika. Uttama dharmikascha, akshaya kirtischa. You are known in the entire world, not only this world, you are known in all the universes. Who is the most famous personality? That is the Supreme Lord. So she calls him Akshaya Kirti, meaning Akshaya means that does not diminish. Kirti is fame, whose fame never diminishes. Whose fame never diminishes. Who is complete in all fame, right? 6 opulences of the Lord, So who's completely famous? That is the Supreme Lord. So she describes him as Akshaya Kirti, Vichakshanascha, and then Kshitikshamavan. Vichakshana means you know to discern what is right and what is wrong. So actually here, there is no question of, people arguing, oh, Ram did a mistake, oh, Ram was flawed when he shot the arrow at Vali. There is no scope for argument, because the wife of the person who was killed itself is calling him Vichakshanascha. He knows correctly to discern what is right and what is wrong. So she tells that because Ramachandra, he was very clear on his mission. And just because Bali had committed a mistake, he did not destroy the entire race of the Vanaras. So Tara, she was very cognizant of all these moves of Lord Ramachandra. So she was appreciating him. I mean, at this point in time, no one would be appreciating a person, right, who has killed her husband. But here is Tara, who's appreciating the glories of the Supreme Lord, because that is the nature of the Lord. When the Lord comes and stands in front of you, if you are a sane person, you would obviously, not have any remorse in the heart. Of course, Rakshasas and demons have remorse in their heart, but here was Tara who was glorifying the Lord. She calls him Shritikshamavan, meaning he's very, very, he forgives people just like Mother Earth, because Mother Earth is considered the most tolerant, and his eyes are have reddish corners. So that is another thing that indicates that he is the Supreme Lord. So we saw this also recently. Samudrika Lakshana explains that when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared also, we said that he had reddish cornered eyes. That is one of the Lakshanas of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord has lotus petal-like eyes with reddish corners. So like this, she describes in various ways that he is the Supreme Lord. Not only did she warn Vali, but even after Lord Ramachandra appeared after the killing of Vali, she looked at Lord Ramachandra and she began glorifying Lord Ramachandra. So anyhow, finally after the Vali was killed, Sugriva now becomes the king of the Vanaras, and he sends his troops in different directions in search of Sita. At that time, Hanuman, he crosses the ocean, he reaches Lanka, and once he reaches Lanka, he manages to get into the palace of Ravana. This is in Sundarakanda. So he manages to get an audience with Ravana. There's a very beautiful painting of Ravana and his demoniac associates trying to bind Hanuman and punish him, light fire to his tail. So at that time, when Hanuman gets his audience with Ravana, he makes the statement that Lord Ramachandra is none other than the Supreme Lord, who's the supreme conqueror among all the demigods. Okay, so he's not ordinary Deva, he's the conqueror of all the demigods. So he says, Brahma Swayambhus Chaturanano Varudras Trinetras Tripurankatava Indro Mahendra Suranayako Vatratum Na Sakta Yudhi Ramavadyam. Neither the self-born Brahma of four faces, nor the three-eyed Rudra who destroyed Tripura, nor the opulent Mahendra who rules over the Devas can protect in battle a person Rama wants to kill. So he directly tells that he's the conqueror of everyone. None of these people can actually stand in front of Lord Ram. So just like how none of the people can stand in front of Vishnu, similarly, Vishnu is equivalent to Lord Ram. So that is the statement that is made by Hanuman when he meets Ravana. Not only that, even when Ravana was looking at the might of Hanuman while he was burning Lanka, and the other Rakshasas were witnessing it, some of the Rakshasas were talking among themselves. Ravana also had this fear in his heart. Who's this person really? Is he by any chance, they make a statement, some of the Rakshasas, they make a statement that is he by any chance Vishnu who has come in the form of a Vanara? That Vishnu who is the Supreme Lord, who's the source of everything, come in the form of a Vanara. So they have these different speculations. Even in the speculation, they are thinking like that. So that is what the Acharyas point out. So the Sundarakanda, again, there's a repetition of this fact. I request one of you to unmute, whoever can read. Can you please read this? Because before we move to the Yuddha Kanda, this should be cleared out. Can someone read this, please?
Hare Krishna Mataji, can I read? Is it okay? One might object to the assertion that Lord Vishnu alone is the ultimate cause of the universes on the basis of statements such as Hiranyagarbha Samavartate Agre. Hiranyagarbha was in the beginning. Rig Veda 10:121. Second, Yada tamastan na diva na ratri na san na chasha chiva eva kevala. When there was darkness, there was neither day nor night, neither existence nor non-existence. Shiva alone existed. Shvetashvara Upanishad 4:18. The third, Indro Maya Bhi Puru Rupa Iyate. Indra appears in many forms by dint of his mystic powers. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 2.5.19. However, in answer to this, it is pointed out that in the context of each of these statements, these names Hiranyagarbha, Shiva and Indra are not names of the deities commonly known by those names. Rather, they are actually words literally describing Lord Vishnu, because literally Hiranyagarbha means the source of the golden Brahmananda. Shiva means the auspicious one, and Indra means the Lord. They are similar to words like Sat, eternally existing, Brahman, the great being, and Atma, the ultimate soul, which are generic adjectives referring to Vishnu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. So before we go to the Yuddha Kanda and see a very famous statement by Mandodari herself, we'll have to get this cleared that in Shastra, in different parts of the Vedas and Upanishads and so many other places, sometimes the other, besides Vishnu, the other devatas are described as being the supreme, right? This confusion is there in everyone's heart. So here comes the acharyas who describe that sometimes it is described that only Hiranyagarbha was in the beginning. And when they say Hiranyagarbha, here they mean Brahma, okay? That's how they mean. They initially mean Brahma. And then there are other statements that say that only Shiva existed and only Indra can appear in different forms. So things like this. But our acharyas say that even under such circumstances, in the beginning, in the end, in the middle, everywhere in the scriptures, it is only Vishnu who's glorified, who's glorified as the Paratattva. So each of these statements, we should understand that these are different names of Vishnu. Even if you hear the Vishnu Sahasranam, which is so famous, you will see that Shiva is one of the names of Vishnu, right? Shiva means all auspicious. Indra means the controller or a lord. Hiranyagarbha means he who is the source of the Brahmanda. Who's the source of the Brahmanda? It is the Supreme Lord Vishnu. So like that, one should understand these words in the right context. Okay, having said that, let's move on to the very, very famous portion of the Yuddha Kanda. So after Hanuman, he burnt Lanka and he went and he gave the message to Lord Ramachandra. Ramachandra hugged him and then embraced him. And then they all proceeded towards the southern ocean and they desired to cross the ocean. They crossed the ocean, they came to Lanka, they fought with Ravana, and finally Ravana was killed by Lord Sri Ramachandra. At that time comes the wives of Ravana. This is a picture of Ravana and his several wives headed by Mandodari. Now, we saw in the previous section how Bali's wife, Tara, was glorifying the Lord when her husband was dead. Now, here comes Mandodari, who's glorifying the Supreme Lord when her husband is dead. Mandodari tells Ram, Okay, now she says, Vyaktamesha Mahayogi Paramatma Sanatana Anadhi Madhya Nidano Mahataha Paramo Mahan Tamasa Paramo Dhata Shanka Chakra Gadadara Srivatsavaksha Nitya Shri Ajayaha Shashvato Dhruva. Certainly, this is that great yogi, the eternal supreme soul, without beginning, middle, and end, the great one, superior to the great, situated far beyond the darkness of matter, the nourisher, the one who holds a conch, disc, and a mace, the one who has the Srivatsa on his chest, who's eternally with Sri, the who is unconquerable, who is beyond decay and transformation. So she makes this ultimate statement in the Ramayana itself. And after she makes this very grand statement, and there is so much about this one verse, because in this one verse, she has brought in all the facts that point out to the Supreme Lord. So she calls him Mahayogi, Paramatma, Sanatana. Sanatana means eternal. You all know he's Anadi, he's Madhya, he's Nidana, he's everything. He's in the middle, he's in the end, he's the beginning. Like that, she goes on, and she describes his beauty. He holds the Shanka Chakra Gadadhara. He's got the Srivatsa mark, and he's always with Sri. So she was telling her husband, you took away Sri from him. Obviously, this is the result that you will have to face. So this is a very, very beautiful verse that is spoken by Mandodari. Then after Ravana was conquered, of course, Sita, she enters fire, and then all the demigods appear. Sita is brought back and presented in front of Ram. When the demigods appear, directly Brahma talks to Ramachandra. So he says, Bhagavan Narayano Deva Shreems Chakrayudho Vibhuhu. You are non-different from Narayana. He makes the grand statement towards the end that, remember, O Ram, do you know who you are? I hope you remember. You are Lord Narayana himself, the one, Ekashrango Varahastvam Bhuta Bhavyas Sapatnajit. So he says, you are the all-pervading Narayana, the husband of Shri, and she is Mahalakshmi. She is Shri. Who is that? Sita. You are the wielder of the disc. You were the one-horned Varaha. You have conquered your opponents in the past and will do so in the future as well. So here comes Brahma, and he makes this obvious statement that he is Narayana. So like this, throughout the Ramayana, from the beginning, Balakanda to Yuddhakanda, you see this consistent theme. Now, after we saw the beginning, end, and repetition, the next part is novelty. So what is new about this? What is new about the Ramayana? What is something new that the Ramayana is presenting? The Ramayana is actually presenting that the Supreme Lord, Vishnu, is the absolute truth, and he has come as Lord Ramachandra. This concept is being repeated again and again, and Ramayana serves as a perfect source of knowledge to understand this. So this is something novel about this scripture. So that's how it is discussed. The next is result. So now we saw Paratattva. Who's Paratattva? How it is established through the Ramayana? We have seen that. What is the result? The result of surrendering unto this Paratattva is attaining the abode and engaging in eternal service unto him. This is also explicit within the Sri Valmiki Ramayana, because as you all know, Valmiki Ramayana is called as Sharanagati Grantha. It is all about Sharanagati. From beginning to end, it only discusses Sharanagati, and it points out this is the Paratattva, this is the Paratattva, this is Ramachandra, this is the Supreme Lord. That is the entire pattern of the Ramayana. Praise, logic, and reason. This should also be discussed to establish this point. So here comes a little story. We have not seen a single story today, so let's see the story. There is one story in the Balakanda that is recited by Parashuram, right? I told you Parashuram himself establishes that Vishnu is the supreme absolute truth. So how did he establish that he is the supreme absolute truth? He narrates the story of the Shiva Dhanush and the Vishnu Dhanush when he invites Lord Ramachandra to actually string the Vishnu Dhanush that he was having in his possession. So, Canto 1, Balakanda, chapter 75, the legend of Vishnu and Shiva Dhanush is described. And in that section, logically, with logic and reason and praise, Vishnu is established greater than all the Devatas, including Shiva, who's sometimes, sometimes it's a gray area, right? Like people cannot understand certain things. So this story actually establishes the supremacy of Vishnu. So there is the story of once the Devatas, all the, Indra, Chandra, Vayu, Agni, all of them, they go to Brahma, who's the grandfather, and they ask Brahma that we don't have so much clarity between who is the greatest. Is it Shiva or is it Vishnu? So they have this question and they go and ask Brahma. So Brahma decides to, request Vishnu and Shiva to perform a pastime to establish this fact. So that is when there is a fight that ensues between Lord Shiva and Vishnu. Now, of course, we know from the Srimad-Bhagavatam, that's not Shiva's mood, right? That's not his mood, but still, for the sake of clarity, sometimes they perform pastimes. So Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu, they took up their respective bow and arrow and they began to fight. So this fight went on for a very, very long time, and it was very difficult to understand who was going to conquer the other. But then at one point, Lord Vishnu, he does a hunkara. He says, hum, he does. And at that time, the string of Pinaka, that is Lord Shiva's bow, remains stretched like as if frozen. It just remains stretched, and Shiva remains very still with his three eyes. He's not able to move. And at that time, he freezes completely and he's not able to move. And it is determined that actually Vishnu is greater and he can actually conquer each and every demigod. So he is the supreme. Then the Devatas, they understand the supremacy of Vishnu. So this story is described by Parashuram when he talks about the greatness of Vishnu Dhanush and Shiva Dhanush. Now, Lord Ramachandra had picked up the Shiva Dhanush and he had strung it, right? Where was the Shiva Dhanush? The Shiva Dhanush was in the kingdom of Mithila, because after this episode that Shiva had with the Hunkara of Vishnu, the entire bow remained like stretched. He gave away this bow to a king by the name Devarata in the Videha kingdom. So that bow was actually carried down and it was kept in the palace. And that was the bow that actually Ramachandra goes to string and show that he can actually win the hand of Sita Devi. Okay. Then Parashuram comes and tells, oh, great, you have strung Shiva Dhanush, that is fine. But now try the Vishnu Dhanush, which is greater than this Shiva Dhanush. So at that point, again, Lord Vishnu's supremacy is described. And one may question now, okay, we all understand Vishnu is the supreme, no questions, but how do we know that this Rama is the supreme? That is the problem. Vishnu supreme, okay. But then again, throughout the Ramayana, Rama's supremacy is also discussed, that he is no ordinary man. Don't consider him to be an ordinary man. And it is also described that Ajayamano Bahuda Vijayate, the Supreme Lord who is Aja, from time to time, he likes to take different incarnations for the sake of all the devotees. So we devotees, we exist in this material world. For us, it is only one time. Though we take multiple births in this one time, meaning one time, it's not like we go to the spiritual world, again fall down, again go to the spiritual world, again fall down. For us, it is not like that. We are just here. But once we go to that spiritual world, we go back, right? So that's how we learn from Bhagavad Gita. So for us, it is only once. But in that once, we have multiple births. But for the Supreme Lord, though he is transcendental, though he is in that spiritual world, he likes to come in again and again, again and again, again and again. Why? Just to take out all the conditioned souls. So for us, it is once, but for that compassionate Lord, it is again and again. So Ajayamano Bahuda Vijayate. He comes in various forms from time to time. And Lord Ramachandra, in various at various points, though he always said Atmanam Manusham Manye Ramam Dasharatatmajam, he, when demigods would come and glorify him, Lord Ramachandra would very sweetly, he would say, no, I consider myself as a simple son of Dasharath. He would tell like that. But still, his Paratattva, his greatness actually came out during the liberation of Jatayu. When Jatayu was, about to die, at that time, Lord Ramachandra, he very boldly declared, now you can go to the spiritual world where once gone, you never come back. Okay. Only the Supreme Lord can give liberation. And only the Supreme Lord can make that bold declaration. Okay, I gave you liberation, now you go. No one else can do that. So Lord Ramachandra, though he wanted to maintain this idea that, in front of everyone that he's a simple boy or a simple man, simple Kshatriya son of Dasharath, still from time to time in the Ramayana, there are different episodes when his Paratattva would just come out. Okay, and one such episode is the liberation of Jatayu. So we'll finish. So this is the topic for today. Lord Vishnu in the form of Lord Rama is the supreme absolute truth. This is the Vidya in the Ramayana. That is the very first secret among the 18 Rahasyas, revelation of the Paratattva, the common theme of the Ramayana. So if you read the Canto 1, the entire Canto 1 Balakanda, you will understand that Vishnu is the cause of the universe. If you read Canto 2, Ayodhya Kanda, you can understand that he is the cause of maintenance through the different activities of Lord Ram. Canto 3, if you read the Aranya Kanda very scrutinizingly, you will understand that this person is the giver of liberation. If you read Canto 4, Kishkinda Kanda scrutinizingly, you will understand that he is the possessor of the prosperity of all auspicious qualities, just like how Tara describes him with so many different auspicious qualities. Canto 5, Sundara Kanda, you read it properly, you will understand, especially through the words of Hanuman, that he is the supreme controller and the destroyer of all. No one can stand in front of him in the battle. Canto 6, Yuddha Kanda, you can understand that this is the supreme absolute truth who is knowable through the Upanishads. The Devas themselves were a testimony to it. Canto 7, Uttarakanda is very open and very explicit. It goes on again and again talking that this Ram is Vishnu and he is descended here in the beginning of the Uttarakanda and the end of the Uttarakanda. Everywhere in the Uttarakanda, it's very clear. It's not even hidden like the other sections. In Uttarakanda, it's too obvious that this is in fact the Supreme Lord and he's the cause and creator of the universe. That is the reason in the repetition part, we saw only till Yuddhakand. We didn't come to Uttarakhand, because if you start Uttarakhand, the entire Uttarakhand goes on talking that he's the Supreme Lord. So with that, we conclude. Before I conclude, I wanted to tell you that please, if at all, if anyone is interested to buy the Ramayana, it is available in ISKCON now, word-to-word translations with commentaries by Vaishnava Acharyas. Very beautiful compilation. It is available till Aranyakand. Pre-orders are being taken for Aranyakand now. Balakanda and Ayodhya Kanda is already available. If you want a person to give pre-order, or if you want to buy it in the US, let me know. There is one Prabhu, Hare Krishna Book Exchange, who is actually giving several pre-orders at this time. So you can get your Aranyakand as well. And if you want to buy the older Balakandam and Ayodhya Kand as well, he can give it to you. Let me know. I can text you personally. Okay, you can contact me. Hare Krishna. Thank you all so much. Not bad, 15 minutes overtime. Okay.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you so much. Such a beautiful class. And I'll be honest, I usually cannot appreciate Ramayana so much, but you made me do so, Mataji. So very, very grateful. So I have I had one point that I was thinking. I don't know if it is relevant or not, or whether it is beneficial to anybody or not. But every one of us has a different way to resonate to the class. The same class we will be all hearing from our point of understanding. And I was thinking, like how Tara, Mandodri, these are Matajis, right? These are Matajis. But they had so much of knowledge that can purify or, take their husbands back. And same we see the Nagapatnis, right? So usually we think that the scriptures always demean the Matajis and, Vedic knowledge, Vedic culture, we are always putting down, suppressing the Matajis and always, saying good things about Prabhus. But if you say soul is a soul, whether it's a Mataji or a Prabhuji, so long we understand Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we are good. So anyone can, take us back to Krishna, so long we understand this fact. So I was just, thinking upon this. So that's what I
totally agree. And that's exactly what even I was thinking about. Yes. It is so explicit, as you said, even in the Bhagavatam, the Nagapatnis, the Yajnapatnis, and then you see even Bali Maharaja's wife, she seemed to know, she was like, in fact, telling her husband was not intelligent enough. So like that.
Gopis,
of course.
The most intelligent.
Most intelligent. Simple and intelligent. Yes. You're right.
And Prabhupada often said that, for the Matajis, it is much easier to do bhakti because we are not so, logical, complex. I didn't want to. So, and one more thing that you said, Mataji, that spiritual world that once we go back, we don't have to come back, but Krishna has to come back. Similarly, his representative also need to come back, right? Krishna and his like Srila Prabhupada. For us, he has to come back again and again. So that was such a wonderful point. And the other thing I wanted to speak about the Ramayana that you said, but you said it that we can contact you. So I will be one of them. So thank you so much, Mataji. And dear devotees, if there is anybody who has any question, realization, or comment, please go ahead. Thank you.
Now, before we open that, you said about how the Lord has to come back again and again, right? They give this example. It's very funny. I just wanted to share this example to understand this point. In India, in ancient homes, right, we used to have this backyard with a well. Maybe some of you must have lived in such homes where there is a well, and then you have a pulley system where you tie a bucket to it, and then you put it down, and then you drag the water up, right, in the water. So sometimes what happens is the bucket itself falls into the well, right? And one day, after several days, you realize that, okay, there are a lot of things that has fallen into the well, and someone has to go down the stairs in the well and I mean, if he knows, without risking his life, he has to get into the water and bring out the bucket. Okay, so that is the task that is given to the person. So one day, suddenly the husband decides, okay, I have to go. The wife does the water, pulling the water, and she loses the bucket, and she tells her husband. The husband goes down, and then he goes into the water, and he's shouting from inside, okay, I think I found the bucket. So he tries to put his hand inside, and he catches something, but it's not the bucket. It's something else that the wife, something fell down earlier. So he gets one item. He says, oh, I found this. I found a pencil. Okay, he puts it up. Then again, he puts his hand inside, and then he finds something else. He finds an old jug, and then he gives it. And then finally, after 5, 6, 7 times, after going inside the water again and again, after the 7th time, he's able to get the bucket out. So the property of the owner fell only once, right? The jug or the bucket or the pencil or the tumbler, whatever it is, it fell only once. But the owner had to go again and again inside the water to take it out. So like that, the Supreme Lord, he has to come again and again, but we fall only once.
Oh, wonderful, Mataji. Thank you so much, Mataji. Yeah. Yes, I think Phaneshwari Mataji has realization.
Oh, sorry. Hare Krishna. Beautiful, beautiful class. I don't even have words to describe, but I was thinking of the same thing as Anuradha Mataji was saying. I was wondering, we know who Ravana and everybody was, Ravana and Hiranyaksha, and but who were their wives? I mean, who were their wives in their previous life that they came down in this lifetime? So I was just curious as to who they were. They must have been somebody important, somebody not just important, but somebody special in some sense, because they had the knowledge and they kind of would have led their husbands. So I was just curious about that. That was my thought. Who were they?
The wives?
Yeah, the wives. Because Ravana, we know they're Jaya and Vijaya in their previous lives. Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakasipu, Ravana, Kumbhakarna, etc. Who were their wives?
I don't know.
I would just wonder, but thank you. Thank you for a beautiful class. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Preethi, Danvat Pranams. Very long class. Though, I could log in only for the latter half of the class, but I mean, you have done the Ramayana series earlier too, right? Long time back. Yeah, I was wondering, yesterday I was listening to this lecture that is like the, like you can say, like the preface or the prologue to the Ramayana, where, there's a mention of the crowncha birds and then Vibhandak and, all those. So is there, like, can you give me a link to that, or perhaps even do a class again on that? That'll really benefit me. I was thinking, is it possible?
Yeah, Krauncha Mitunadikam Avadim Kama Mohitam. That is the seed, right? Valmiki sees this 2 birds, and so how it goes, it's very similar to how Bhagavatam starts off. So Bhagavatam has different layers in it, right? Like that, even Valmiki Ramayana in the beginning, it has different layers. First, Valmiki gets an idea from Narad Muni. He hears the Sankshipta Ramayana, and then he's thinking about it, and he goes to the forest nearby, and there he sees 2 birds on the tree. And when they are together, at that time a hunter comes and shoots an arrow, and one of the pair falls off. And seeing that the other one is aggrieved, so seeing this, Valmiki, he feels very bad, and he pronounces a curse. That's the curse that I said now. So how can you, he tells, oh hunter, may you fall dead because you unnecessarily harmed this beautiful Krauncha Mituna, pair of Krauncha birds. And one of them is separated from the other. So like that, he makes a curse, and then he feels bad. He says, what did I do? I mean, in the first verse, we see Tapaswadhyayane Rataram, he's glorified as such a great personality. And within the next chapter, he's pronouncing a curse and anger. So then he feels very bad, and then he doesn't know what to do. At that time, Brahma appears, and Brahma tells him, "No, this is the very first verse of the Ramayana," and he gives the other meaning. Like if you juxtapose the words in a verse, you can derive a different meaning. And then he tells that actually this is you mean to tell that Ravana separated this this pair of Rama and Sita, and finally Ravana was chastised by Lord Ramachandra, something like that. He gives a meaning, and then that becomes the further, like it becomes like the first verse in one sense, and then Valmiki continues to write. Yeah, that's correct, Mataji. That's there directly in the Ramayana. In the first few chapters, if you see, you will see this, the audience with Brahma. That's when it happens. Yeah.
Sure, yeah. Like I was wondering, there are more details, right, about Vivanda than Romapada, and so many things, right? I was wondering.
Yeah, that is also there. Yeah, correct.
Maybe I would have to go back and
Rishi Shringa pastime of how
the Rishi Shringa and all that.
Yes. How because when they decide to do the Putra Kamishti Yajna, at that time Rishi Shringa has to be brought and to perform the sacrifice. And then the story of Rishi Shringa is recounted by Valmiki for the audience, for everyone to know who this Rishi Shringa is, who's the one who's going to perform the sacrifice, right? He's such a great person. So his birth, and then how he actually blessed the Romapada kingdom and all that. Yeah, he was the son of Vibandaka, and then all that is mentioned before the Putra Kamishti Yajna is described. Yes.
Thanks so much, Preethi. So nicely with details you do the Ramayana. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Oh, go ahead.
Please go ahead, Mataji. I was asking if there's anybody else.
Oh, yes. Two things. One is, it's my dream to just listen to your whole Ramayana again. And so, is there a link to was a playlist ever made for that?
Yes, Mataji. Yes.
Okay, so how can I find the link for that?
I can text you the link.
Oh, pretty please. Thank you so much.
Me too.
Maybe Bhakti Sangha, Mataji. Maybe Bhakti Sangha, then it will be very accessible to everybody.
Yeah. It was, of course, it was one of my very first endeavors of reading the Ramayana. So it might not have so many commentaries. It was just katha, just story. So just letting you know. But it didn't have a lot of these things that we have today. Now we have so many translations, and at that time Govindarajayam was all in Sanskrit. It was too hard for me to decipher. So I would only take some very little realizations were there. Yeah.
Oh no, Mataji, the way you told that story, I've been dreaming about rehearing ever since. It was so, I would be like a kid in a candy store to hear that again. Yeah, it was so
sweet of you. Yes, Mataji, I will share it.
It was so nice. Oh my God. Yeah, my other question is just for repetition. When you were discussing the fact that in other Puranas, I think, Lord Shiva is seen as declared as supreme. I think maybe Lord Brahma is declared as supreme, this person, that person. So the way that we reconcile that is by saying that Vishnu is the source of all of them. Can you do that part again for me?
Okay, so there are different acharyas have given different insights. One thing is where these things are in the Vedas, actually, in the Shruti Shastras. That's where in some places it is mentioned that everything came from Hiranyagarbha, and then only Shiva existed. Such like, for example, in Rudram Chamakam, there could be some verses like that. So in the Veda and the Shruti Shastras, wherever it is mentioned, our acharyas tell us that it should be considered as one of the as Vishnu himself. Even Madhvacharya talks about it in the beginning, in the end, everywhere. It's actually Vishnu. It is only Vishnu can be glorified as the supreme. But how is it done? Is all these names belong to Vishnu. That's how they are clarifying here in the Ramayana. All these names like Shiva or Hiranyagarbha, all these are different names for Vishnu also, like it is established in the Vishnu Sahasranam.
Okay,
So Yeah, because if you think, okay, so many are the supreme, then God, that's why Madhvacharya says you should see in the beginning and throughout you should not just take one verse out of context. You have to see the Shastra in totality and see consistently who is declared as the supreme. Now, then we can resolve inconsistencies. So there are some places where very few consistencies are there. At that time, we should take the help of scriptures that use the same name to refer to Vishnu. Did that make sense?
Yeah.
That's how they are telling. Yeah. Here, in this part. But otherwise, what you said is correct. We should understand them to be coming from Vishnu. That is the correct understanding for us. But that specific slide was talking about this.
Yeah, see, I'm just trying to kind of play devil's advocate, trying to see these statements that you just made from the perspective of somebody who sees Lord Shiva, for example, as supreme as we see Lord Vishnu as supreme, And I'm just trying to think how they would hear the statements that you just made that, well, Vishnu, all these names like Lord Shiva is a name for Lord Vishnu. I'm just wondering how convincing that would be for a person who sees one of these other personalities as supreme.
Yeah.
Because the argument that we're using is that, acharyas are saying this. But I guess if they don't have faith in those acharyas, it still wouldn't debunk their faith.
Yeah, it wouldn't debunk their faith. So they also have to analyze the scriptures in totality. So when they say in totality, with generally we say prasthanatraya, right, to establish any philosophical school of thought. So if they read it consistently, it is not possible for them to actually establish it on a consistent basis. So
yeah,
they will fail. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mataji.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. What an amazing class, Mataji. Definitely it is quite technical, but throughout it was so interesting, very, very interesting. And the slides and the pictures and all were just so perfect, Mataji. Love the class. There is a lot to wrap my mind around. I did have some questions as we were going through it, but now I don't have any. So thank you so much, Mataji. Very, very beautiful session. And thank you for putting so much effort to teach us this. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Indu Mataji. And thank you for sharing the link. Those of you who wanted, it is there. Indu Mataji shared it in the chat. So please go ahead and access. Yes, Mataji, I do agree. I was just thinking how much effort you would have put in so that we can understand it. I'm very, very grateful, not for just this class, every class that you rendered. Very grateful for that, Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji. Actually, I should not take any credit. It is directly the mercy of our acharyas and that wonderful book that the devotees have published. So
that must be there, Mataji, but your rendition is yours and your realizations are yours. So
thank you, Mataji. The audience mean a lot. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Is there anybody else or anyone who would like to share their realizations or have any questions before we end the call?
Just that story about the seed of the Ramayana, where the hunter had killed the two birds. That you had included that when you told your Ramayana series. You had included that there, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. But unfortunately, Balakanda was, when I did that, I thought it's one day, one kanda, but I couldn't do it. So I ended up doing it for a year, but only Balakanda I did it for 1 day. So, but maybe Balakanda has a lot more. Maybe we should do a separate series on the Balakanda sometime in the future. Yeah. But the others were a little more elaborate, other sections in that series. Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna. So with your permission, Mataji, and all Vaishnavas' blessings and permission, shall we end the call, Mataji, for
Yes,
today? Or
ma'am.
pause? Thank you so much, Mataji. With that, we'll offer our humble
Mataji, I
obeisances
have
to
a
all.
question, Mataji. Sorry. Can I ask a question, Mataji?
Please
Nobody wants to let you go.
Okay. So my question is, you were talking about how Lord Rama is the absolute truth, or right?
Mm.
But we say that Lord Rama is an incarnation of Lord, and the Supreme Lord is Lord Krishna. So how do you reconcile those?
Yeah, Krishna is the fountainhead of all incarnations. He's Rama is Purna Avatar, Krishna is Purna Tama, right? He's complete of the complete. Yes. But absolute truth is absolute truth, Vishnu Tattva. That's all. Fountainhead of all incarnations is Krishna.
Okay. And once again, it would be based on the 64, the 4 extra qualities?
Yeah.
Or does it have something else?
Krishna is complete in rasa. The 4 extra qualities make him the fountainhead. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Mataji.
And also, of course, Ete Chamsa Kalapumsha, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, Bhagavatam verse. Directly established, he is Paripurna Bhagavan, Purnatama Bhagavan.
Thank you, Mataji. So with that, finally, we'll offer our obeisances. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubheva patitanam pavane vaishnave Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ram Navami ki jai. Ramayan ki jai. Her Grace Preethi Vilasini Mataji ki jai.
Thank you,
All
Mataji.
glories to all the
Koti
devotees.
pranam.
Hare Krishna.
All
Hare
glories
Krishna,
to you,
Mataji.
Mataji.
Thank
Hari
you.
Bol. Dandavat pranam.
Koti dandavat pranam, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
I'm ending the meeting.